Hello y'all and welcome back. So in this video I'm going to argue that God exists. In particular I'm going to argue that the phenomenon of motion proves God's existence. The argument for motion is perhaps the most overlooked and the most underrated of the arguments for God's existence. I rarely see it. Yet it is easily one of the most powerful theistic arguments. So powerful is it, in fact, that Aristotle adopts it as the argument for God's existence. The argument itself is fairly simple. Things move. Everything in motion is caused to move by something outside it. Yet this chain cannot go back forever. So there must be some first mover. But this first mover is what we call God. Now at first blush, this argument is vulnerable at both premises. Consider premise 1. Everything in motion is caused to move by something else. Why think this? Why not suppose that a thing could just start moving with no cause at all? Now here I'm going to ask the viewer's permission to briefly revisit some arguments I made in my first video. These can be reduced to a single reply: things just don't do that. Nowhere in human history has anyone ever observed a thing to move, and of course coming to be as a kind of motion, with no external cause. And the world where things did this would, as stated earlier, be inexpressibly terrifying and utterly unlivable. Yes, science, medicine, and technology would instantly grind to a halt. Yes, brick walls would materialize in front of you on the freeway, smashing you to smithereens. But it would get weirder still. Semi-trucks would swerve into your lane head-on. People would fly off the tops of buildings, sometimes literally fly. Why not? Your own body would be an open rebellion, flinging objects across rooms and attacking passers-by with whatever weapons were ready to hand. If you pause for a moment and embrace, like really embrace, this concept of motion with no cause whatsoever, no flight of fancy is too far-fetched. Things get weird. But in reality, things obey fixed laws. And this is because everything that moves has an external cause for its motion, an explanation. Things do not move without some external cause. So much for objection 1. But what about the second premise? 2. This chain of causation cannot go back forever. But why not? Why couldn't B cause A at time t, and C cause B at time t minus 1, and D cause C at time t minus 2, and so on forever? Now there are 2 replies to this objection. One is scientific, one is philosophico-mathematical. Scientifically speaking, the Big Bang Theory is still our best science, and the Big Bang Theory holds that the universe began. So our best science has it that the universe does not go back forever in time. But the philosophico-mathematical reply is weightier still. To hold that the universe extends forever into the past is to hold to the existence of an actual infinite, the collection of past moments in time, not to mention the collection of past movers and past motion events on this particular view. And there is good reason to believe that an actual infinite is incoherent and thus impossible. The most famous illustration of this comes to us from the 20th century mathematician David Hilbert. Hilbert asks us to imagine a weary traveler desperate for lodging. He has the good fortune to see 2 hotels in the road ahead. He goes into the first, a conventional hotel, one with 100 rooms, let's say, and asks the hotel manager for a room. The hotel manager has to disappoint him. He says, "I'm sorry, son, all our rooms are full." Disappointed but not defeated, the weary traveler goes next door to the hotel next door to try the other one. Now this hotel, Hilbert's hotel, is an unusual hotel. It has an infinite number of rooms. The traveler asks the hotel manager for a room. The manager replies that all the rooms are full, and the man's heart sinks. But the hotel manager assures the man that he can indeed have a room for the night. He then takes the guest in room 1, moves into room 2, the guest in room 2 to room 3, 3 to room 4, 4 to room 5, and so on all the way up to infinity. The first room, room 1, is now open, the guests are accommodated, and the weary traveler goes in to enjoy his room. But before, all the rooms were full. It gets way weirder. The happy traveler enjoys his stay and checks out. He then posts a glowing review on TripAdvisor, and the next night a large number of guests show up clamoring for rooms. Indeed, an infinite number of guests show up, and the rooms are all full. But the hotel manager is an inveterate optimist. "No problem," he says. He takes the guest in room 1, moves into room 2. The guest in room 2 moves into room 4. The guest in room 3 moves into room 6. The guest in room 4 moves into room 8, and so on up to infinity, moving each guest into the room with double the number of the room they previously occupied. Now, since any number doubled is an even number, an infinite number of odd-numbered rooms are now open. This infinite number of odd-numbered rooms is filled by the infinite number of guests coming in. They check into this infinite number of odd-numbered rooms. The hotel manager collects his presumably infinite fee, and everyone is satisfied. But before they checked in, all the rooms were full. The next morning, the infinite guests check out, the hotel manager moves everyone back, and the rooms are once again all full, despite the hotels having just lost an infinite number of guests. Now, did this story stop making sense a long time ago? If so, the problem lies not with you or with me, but with the concept of an actual infinite itself. No real quantity, if added to itself, is itself. No real quantity, if subtracted from itself, is itself. But an actual infinite behaves this way. So an actual infinite is not a real quantity. It is incoherent, it is made up, thus a contradiction, thus strongly impossible, impossible in the strictest sense of the word. Yet an actual infinite is central to a view in which the chain of movers goes back forever. On this view, the chain of movers is infinite. The chain of movements is infinite. Time itself, accommodating as it does this infinity of movers, is infinite. So this objection fails. The chain can't go back forever. So there must be some first mover. But the thing that began the motion of space and time, the thing that is both powerful enough to start the universe itself in motion and eternal enough to create time, is universally acknowledged to be God. So God exists. Now, the interests of time have kept me here from canvassing the countless cosmological models currently on offer. If you wish to spend a truly fascinating afternoon or evening until the wee hours, treat yourself to a YouTube session on these theories. You will not be disappointed. But one thing is true of all these theories. They all either hold that motion began, or they hold that it extends forever into the past. If the latter, then they are susceptible to the latter consideration I have just developed. If the former, then the former. In other words, whatever eternal recurrence or undulation or multiverse theory physics produces must ultimately answer the question, but all of it, the whole shooting match, where did it come from? And to this, there can be only two answers. It began or it didn't. And of these, both ultimately point, as I have argued here, to God. Thank you.